security, politics, sports, and more. Stream live on your smartphone and tablets and stay connected.
NTA International News. As a prelude to the second Regional Security Summit in Abuja, Foreign Affairs Minister briefs the media, says $15 billion to be spent to revive Lake Chad Basin. Wife of Nigeria's president partners wife of Nasarawa State Governor to boost nationwide campaign to improve the health of women and children. Nigerian government advised to collaborate with international agencies to conduct a missing persons registration. Hello there, thanks for joining us on the news on NTA International. I'm Joseph Johnson. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the new fuel pricing regime is not a subsidy removal issue, but a foreign exchange problem in the face of dwindling earnings. The Vice President noted that the various observations and attendant issues generated by the fuel pricing regime are strong points, adding that the most important is how to shield the poor from the worst effects of the policy. In a release signed by the Senior Special Assistant Media and Publicity, Laolu Akonde, the Vice President stated that the truth of the matter is that local consumption of fuel is almost entirely imported, and that while the NNPC exchanges crude from its joint venture share to provide about the 50% of local fuel consumption, the remaining 50% is imported by major and independent marketers. And the federal government says the introduction of a new price regime for premium motor spirit has become inevitable in order to halt the crippling fuel scarcity in the country and ensure availability of the product. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said this at the inauguration of Advertisers Association of Nigeria Marketers Conference in Lagos. He said only the liberalization of petrol supply will ensure the availability of the product. The minister noted that the resultant fuel scarcity has created abnormal increase in the price. He said the new fuel regime should not be misconstrued as the removal of subsidy, since there is no provision for subsidy in 2016 appropriation. Meanwhile, Speaker of House of Representatives Yakubu Dogara has assured Nigerians that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari will not take any deliberate decision to worsen their pains. He gave the assurance when he granted audience to a delegation from the National Council of Ulamas of the Jibuis, led by its national chairman, Sheikh Nasir Abdul Muhai. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nko reports.
The increase in the pump price of fuel to 145 naira was the subject matter of this meeting, as the religious group urged the House to intervene and ensure that Nigerians are not further impoverished by the removal of fuel subsidy.
This material time, we have to see our people that is down there. We have to consider them. We have to take cognizance of what they are doing.
Speaker Yakubu Dogara explained that as long as the present administration is concerned, it will not embark on a policy that will cripple the economy. He noted that as representatives of the people, the National Assembly will always play its role as the watchdog of the executive. Dogara assured them that the House of Representatives will look into the matter as soon as it comes to the floor of the House.
So the decision has been taken. I'm sure it's coming back. It will come to us in the House of Representatives. When it comes, we'll call all the parties and then look at it. If there are better ways of doing it, maybe we can just suggest. Because I believe the overall goal of this government is to ensure that this country don't collapse on our head.
The Speaker also received the President of Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, where he urged the federal government to strengthen its mechanism against tax evasion. He says the House of Representatives will soon engage the Minister of Finance on tax issues. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nko, NTA News.
Let's bring you other news now. Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyema says $15 billion is to be spent on the recharging of the Lake Chad Basin. He said this in a media briefing, a prelude to the second Regional Security Summit holding in Abuja. Oyeyemi Ajayi has details.
The briefing was for the minister to intimate the media on issues of dominance at the second Regional Security Summit in Abuja. This time around, the military situation in the northeast, humanitarian supports to the region affected by Boko Haram, as well as intelligence sharing, are on the front burner. The minister said apart from the IDPs in different parts of the country, about 65,000 refugees are still in Cameroon, and a tripartite approach by Nigeria, Cameroon and the United Nations Refugees Commission would be actively used for their safe return to Nigeria.
We have also the situation, looking at the environmental and economic situation of the Northeast, and in particular the environmental impact on Lake Chad itself, which is now 10% of its original size, and this has had a terrible economic impact on the people of that region.
Geoffrey Onyema confirmed that a total of $15 billion will be needed to recharge the Lake Chad, adding that countries in the region will also explore ways of sharing intelligence. The Foreign Affairs Minister also granted audience to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, who is in the country to attend the Regional Security Summit. In Abuja, Oyeyemi Ajayi, NTA News.
In view of the recent partial deregulation of the petroleum sector, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources is to present to Nigerians details of the challenges inherited from the sector and measures adopted by government to mitigate hardship on Nigerians. This is just as Secretary to the government says government has resolved to continue to dialogue with the labor unions to address grievances and agree with stakeholders on measures to reinvent the country.
Unavailability and cost of petroleum products have been one problem troubling the nation. The cost of crude oil, operational condition of the nation's refineries, and much later, the costs associated with importation of petroleum products, among other factors, have been advanced as the reasons for this problem. All these reasons can, however, be attributed to one single factor: inability of the country to produce locally the petroleum products for consumption. The problem became compounded with the criminality and monumental corruption that creeps into the importation of petroleum products. Worse still, the nation's foreign exchange reserve was completely depleted. The implication of these developments, therefore, is that government cannot afford subsidy payments anymore and has therefore introduced tight monetary measures in the allocation of foreign exchange. Given this circumstance, government is left with no option but to partially deregulate the sector and assume the role of a regulator. The ceiling of 145 naira per litre is the highest approved for the cost of petrol, a decision government has made in sincere and in good faith, with an assurance that prices of the products will come down as the production from the country's refineries became more regular and stable. It is also hoped that the competitiveness and efficiencies that deregulation policy will enthrone will further bring the price of petroleum products lower. This is why the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babashir David Lawal, is appealing to commentators to restrain from deliberately inflaming the situation, but to demonstrate a high sense of patriotism and dispassionate as people exchange ideas.
The wife of
Nigeria's President Aisha Buhari, in partnership
with the wife of Nasarawa State Governor Mairo Tanko Almakura, has flagged free medical services in Nasarawa State as part of her nationwide campaign.
Privileged women and children across the 13 local government areas of Nasarawa State. The exercise, which is carried out by the Future Assured Initiative, a pet project of Mrs. Aisha Buhari and the Telefi Women and Youth Foundation, an initiative of wife of Nasarawa State Governor Mairo Tanko Almakura, will also target the warming of over 3,500 children across rural communities in the state. Areas to be covered include screening and treatment of people living with health challenges like hypertension, diabetes, breast and cervical cancer, hernia, lipoma and cataract, among others.
I'm calling on all people with NGOs that have the opportunity to provide one service, one care or another to emulate this good gesture of Aisha Buhari.
The poor health outcomes for women and children prompted me as mother of the nation to embark on this health exercise under my Future Assured initiative.
And we want the Nasarawa state government to also assist. Sometimes people go about these killer diseases, it's not only AIDS or cancer. Diabetics and hypertension are silent killers.
In Lafia, Joshua Ojito, NTA News.
Report just reaching us says President Muhammadu Buhari is back in Abuja after attending the anti-corruption summit in London. The president at the summit said that in furtherance of his administration's ongoing war against corruption, Nigeria will soon begin the full implementation of the principles of the Open Contracting Data Standard. The National Institute for Legislative Studies is dialoguing with key players in the health sector on challenges in prioritizing healthcare delivery to Nigerians. Dennis Adegunloye reports that the interaction was necessary due to the growing concerns in the health sector.
As the saying goes, health is wealth, and so a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. With this in mind, perhaps a worrying statistic is that for over 10 years, the health sector share of the budget has stagnated at 5%, a far cry from the 15% global benchmark. Presenting the research report on legislature and health budget in Nigeria, Dr. Aremu Fatai Ainde identifies findings including how the National Assembly perceives the present state of affairs.
The maternal mortality rate is still unacceptably very high in Nigeria. On the child mortality is the same thing.
The Director General of the National Institute for Legislative Studies, Dr. Ladi Hamalai, describes as worrisome that millions don't have access to healthcare, and this has over time eroded faith in the public health system.
I believe we've reached a crisis point in the nation. We need to talk to each other, find solutions. Investment is not the only thing.
Where emphasis should really be, like you said, should be at the primary healthcare level. But that cannot be because the local government are handicapped.
Recommendations are expected to be drawn up which aim to offer lasting solution to the crisis. From the NILS headquarters, Abuja, Dennis Adegunloye, NTA News.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is assisting to revive the economy of the northeastern states of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa and Bauchi, which were ravaged by insurgency. Towards this end, the bank has presented relief materials to cushion the hardship being faced by the internally displaced persons in these states. Amina Fidi Amadu reports.
The intervention of the central bank is coming at a time when the Nigerian military has succeeded in bringing activities of Boko Haram under control and normalcy is gradually returning to the affected communities. Presenting a consignment of relief materials to Borno State Governor Kashi Shetima in Maiduguri, Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele disclosed that the CBN has already mapped out strategies to complement the effort of the federal government in rebuilding the Northeast. Represented by an official, Isiaku Ibrahim, the CBN governor expressed happiness with the news coming from Borno State on the successes so far recorded in the fight against terror and commended Governor Kashi Shetima and other stakeholders for working assiduously in rebuilding the state.
He believes these efforts will help to provide a conducive environment that will enable implementation of policies and programs by the federal and state government and the central bank.
Borno State Governor Kashi Shetima, while receiving the food items, commended the CBN for sharing in their hours of need.
It shows the way of humanitarian, it shows the empathy and support we have for the people of Borno.
He said the food items will go a long way in preparing for the needs of internally displaced persons, assuring that the state will remain indebted to CBN. In Maiduguri,
The Nigerian government has been enjoined to work in close collaboration with the Nigerian Red Cross and work with international agencies to conduct a missing persons registration exercise and facilitate family tracing and reunification for those fleeing and to rescue the captors from Boko Haram. This is one of the recommendations of Refugees International and other agencies at a forum held in Washington, D.C. on women and girls in northeast Nigeria. Adeyemi Omojala Fatuba has details.
April 2016 report of Refugees International's perspective, the over 200 Chibok girls abducted by Boko Haram is a part of a much larger story of violence against women and girls in the northeast. The organization noted that attention is yet to translate into sustained humanitarian assistance for all that have been affected due to enormity of the emergency, conflicts between aid agencies, limited resources, and ineffective partnership.
As we now see a new administration that is taking the bull by the horns on a military side in the northeast and launching this military campaign against Boko Haram.
The Director of Africa Program, Center for Strategic and International Studies, Jennifer Cook, and other speakers at the forum say continued attention would provide information and enhance needed humanitarian assistance for the displaced persons.
The more data and evidence we have on the conditions of the girls, what services are reaching them,
what is lacking, the more the better. And to raise their expectations to be able to live in safety and security, I think we will be able to reduce the incidences of violence.
They added that having adequate coordination system, staffing and resourcing the emergency appropriately, as well as honest conversations between humanitarian agencies and communities will ultimately help rebuild the Northeast region. From Washington, D.C., Adeyemi Omojola Fatoba, NTA News.
This is the news on NTA International, coming to you from Nigeria's city, Abuja. Stay tuned for more news after this break.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
So glad to have you back. Minister of Finance Kemi Adeosun says the immediate injection of 350 billion naira into the economy by way of capital expenditure will trigger the repositioning of the Nigerian economy. Gufang Shaji reports that the minister was speaking on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria on the implementation of the 2016 federal government's budget of change.
The principal goal of the 2016 budget, according to the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, revolves around a national development plan anchored on economic reforms, infrastructure development, governance and security, social development, environment, as well as states and regional development. The minister says towards achieving these goals, the execution and monitoring will begin with priority key areas.
The Budget and Planning Ministry must know what are your milestones. So if your project, for example, has not been tendered, in the past you would have gotten your money, you sit in it on the bank, put the money in the bank for some months and so on and so forth. That is not happening anymore.
However, economic experts on the program stress the need for attention on medium-term expenditure framework towards industrialization of Nigeria and job creation.
We have to focus on developing the economy internally. We should look at production. Government should not be an impediment to business.
Look very deeply at the implementation mechanisms.
With the high expectation of the 2016 budget of change by Nigerians, the guest hoped that the key targets and provision of the budget, when achieved, will create wealth. In Abuja, Gufan Shaji, NTA News.
A bit on politics now. Borno State Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Shettima Shehu, has urged members to work towards ensuring the emergence of credible and committed leadership during the party's national convention. He made the appeal at a meeting of the party in Maiduguri. Lami Ali reports.
Alhaji Shettima Shehu, who emerged on the post as chairman of the PDP in Borno State at the recently concluded State Congress, noted that this is the right time to do away with internal wranglings in order to achieve the constitution of a formidable team to run the affairs of the party at the national level. The chairman stressed that the peaceful conduct achieved at the State Congress of the PDP should be replicated at the forthcoming national convention, as it is only through unity of purpose that the party can attain enviable heights. Former caretaker chairman of the PDP in Borno, Rilwana Dauda Julde, harped on the need to rally around the newly constituted ESCO to enable it to make the desired impact in the politics of the state and the country as a whole. Also elected during the PDP State Congress are Idrissa Jigda, Deputy Chairman, Fali Wabulari, Secretary, Usman Mahadi, Treasurer, Awajiri, Women Leader, Muhammad Al-Kali, Auditor, and Abga Chiroma, Publicity Secretary in Maiduguri. Lami Ali, NTA News.
Time now to talk business with Olayinka Ojo.
Welcome to the business segment. International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde said there were no economic positives to Britain leaving the European Union and that the impact will range from pretty bad to very, very bad. Her blunt warning came as the IMF said the country will risk falling into weaker economic growth, lower house prices and diminished foreign investment if voters opt to leave the European Union after the referendum next month. Oil prices ended a three-day bull run on Friday, falling as a strong dollar made it more expensive to hold oil positions, though losses were cushioned by Nigerian outages that have slashed output to the lowest in 22 years. A strong U.S. currency weighed on greenback-dominated commodities such as oil futures, making fuel imports more expensive for countries using other currencies and potentially hitting demand. German economic growth, according to economic experts, is likely to slow in the second quarter on Friday, dampening expectations after data showed output had more in the first quarter to hit its highest level in 2 years. The report says a slow recovery path for the global economy remain a threat to German growth. Before we go, a quick look at closing figures on the floor of the stock exchange. And that's it on the business segment.
Olayinka Ojo there reporting. And from business, time now for stories making headlines on the global scene. Uche Nwizu is our guide.
A court in Johannesburg, South Africa has ruled that former gold miners in the country can go ahead with a class action against mining companies over health damage allegedly caused by their work. The High Court's decision paves way for what would become the class action in South African history. Ex-miners say they contracted silicosis, an incurable lung disease, after years of working in the mines. The court believes that the class action was the only realistic option. Reports from Ethiopia say at least 90 people have been confirmed dead following days of heavy rains that caused flash floods and landslides. The heavy rains came after Ethiopia's worst droughts in decades. Meanwhile, destroyed bridges have made delivering assistance difficult. And Brazil's new interim president, Michel Temer, has addressed the nation after the Senate voted to back the impeachment trial of Dilma Rousseff. He has named a business-friendly cabinet that includes respected former central bank chief Henrik Meirelles as finance minister. Temer called for trust in the values of the people and in their ability to rebuild the economy. He was the leftist Rousseff's vice president before withdrawing his party support in March. Rousseff